Attention higher ed leaders. Are you ready to transform your marketing and enrollment strategy? Don't miss Insights EDU, February 12th through 14th in New Orleans, the premier conference for higher education marketing and enrollment management. Spots are filling fast. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go!
At Ellucian Live 2025, we're going to explore the magic of innovation. We want to imagine, believe, and achieve. It's happening April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida, and we're going to explore technology, modernization, and
artificial intelligence.
Explore the latest technology solutions, discover industry insights, and make valuable connections as a global community. It's time to register for Ellucian Live 2025 at elive.ellucian.com.
Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up in the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Dr. Joe Salustio back with you on another episode here. And I'm going to bring my guest co-host in just a second. But as I was talking to her, and I'm going to have her validate something for me. How many times I've said in this podcast, I record every single day. And people look at me and go, you don't. I mean, you say you record every single day, but you don't really record every single day. And I go, have you seen how many episodes we release? You can't release that many episodes if you don't record that often. But this person, who I'll introduce in just a moment, we gave access to our calendar because she hosts something in the EdUp Experience Network, which I'll let her talk about in a second. But she saw the calendar, and she's going to be my personal validating tool today. She's going to validate this, that I record every day. And I only say that not to brag, but because it's not about bragging, but it's about there are so many stories yet to tell in higher education. You think we've been doing this for 5 years, and for the last, 3, I think I've been recording on a daily basis. And some days, sometimes, I just can't. And this person will also be stepping in for me to time to take over. You know, some days I need a headspace. I need to take a break from the higher ed stuff. Not that I don't love my guests. I really, really do. But some days, you just can't. And so having people like Dr. Lori Shanderson, who fills in for me from time to time, Dr. Bill Pepicello, who fills in for me from time to time, some big names in the industry. This person also is a big name. Let's bring in right now, ladies and gentlemen. She is Dr. Jody Blinko. She's the Vice President of Enrollment Management Consulting at Education Dynamics. Jody, welcome back. How are you?
Thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure to be back. And yes, I will validate your recording every day. When I looked at the calendar, I was like, wow, there is no shortage of guests that you have knocking down the door to be on the show. I was very impressed. And some days you just need a break. So I'm here to help with that process, and honored to be your stand-in host on those days where you just need it.
Well, you're also, just by the way, one of our most amazing partners, Education Dynamics, who we work with very closely here. I will tell you two things. One, the EdUp Experience will be recording live at Insights EDU in New Orleans, February 12th through 14th. See, I'm going off of memory, 12th through 14th, coming up soon. And the Modern Learner Online Report, probably for aforementioned title. I'm making this title up. It's probably something way more slick, knowing that Education Dynamics does marketing. But that report on the online student learner, the modern learner, literally gave me information in how I made my decisions as somebody recruiting online students. And so we're looking forward to that. Tell us a little bit about the conference, Jody, while you're here, and what you hope to expect this year.
Yeah. So not only are we in New Orleans, so you get all the Cajun and beignets you want, but it really is one of the only conferences out there that brings together marketing and enrollment in a really unique way, where we're bringing you skills that you can take back and implement right away at your campuses. speakers from all over the country at all different levels. And you bring up the modern learner, where we're really talking about students and prospective students have evolved and changed, and our practices need to be able to do that right along with them, to engage them in ways, meet them where they are, from that first point of contact all the way to when they graduate. That's what the modern learner is all about. I will also share the unified enrollment strategy, which is where we are servicing more of our traditional partners, students who are transitioning right out of high school, going into college. They are also part of the modern learner, but with this unified strategy and approach. So come join us in New Orleans, learn about that, Education Dynamics Insights EDU.
And, it's such a good segue as you think about us to our guest, because the institution she is coming from was serving the modern learner before the modern learner was the modern learner, and did it better, frankly, than any other university in possibly the world, and continues to do great work as their business model has changed, as the industry has changed, but they're still doing incredible work. Let's bring her in right now. She's the future, Dr. Doris Savron. How do you like that sound? Vice Provost of Colleges, Assessment and Curriculum at the University of Phoenix. Doris, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here.
Since you're in your dissertation phase, I now have introduced you as the future Dr. Doris Savron, which means you have to finish it. So I did that here live on the podcast.
How's that?
Now you can't
how's
interrupt.
How's that for accountability?
You can't take a break. You can't interrupt. No excuses. Now you're stuck. You got to do it. You're welcome? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Doris, tell us, look, I think that anybody that doesn't know University of Phoenix has been, frankly, not listening or learning about higher education. UOP has been around, at one time served over 500,000. I think it was closer to 650,000 students. One of my closest confidants, mentors, and no BS contacts that I have is Dr. Bill Pepicello, the former president of the University of Phoenix. I know so much about UOP, so much respect. But for the one listener we have that goes, what is University of Phoenix? Set the stage for us. What does UOP do? How do you do it?
Sure. So we are a university that has offerings from PD certificates all the way up through doctorate programs. We're primarily online. We've been around for 40 plus years and online for almost as long as that. And our model is really thinking about meeting the student where they are. And we served the non-traditional student a long time ago at our birth, actually, as an organization, and continue to learn more and more about adult learners and what they need to help them be successful and reach their career goals. So
one of the things to bring us to kind of current times, obviously we have just all been part of a landmark election in the United States, and without getting political, one of the things that I believe is going to happen, I think there are many out there that believe this too, the ROI conversation of higher ed will become louder. The skills-based economy, the training becomes louder. And when that happens, career services becomes a very loud piece of it. And by and large, institutions of higher education don't invest a lot in career services. We just don't, especially in the nonprofit side. It's, pat on the back, good luck. Maybe we can help you with the resume out there, maybe if you have some contacts. But UOP has a completely different model, one that is based in career and service. Can you talk about career services a little bit and how important you think that's going to be for the future?
Sure. So we've always thought it was important to help people, provide people the resources at the time that they need them, right? And everybody needs something different depending on what their career goals are. So we want that to be a flexible offering, but we start with the curriculum and what we do in the curriculum and making sure our learners understand the skills that they're learning at the course level that feeds into the program outcomes, that feeds to potential career outcomes that credential is prepared for, so that they're fully aware as they go in and the work that they're doing, why it's relevant, why they need to pay attention to the things that they're learning, how that's going to play out in their work environments. And our assignments and our assessments, we try to focus on making sure that those are things they're going to have to repeat and do in the workplace as well. So So we start there because that needs to be repeated, right? You make a decision one day, you need to be reminded all the time how that actually applies in the work that you're doing, because they're working full time, they have families they're raising, life can sometimes get in the way. And so making sure that they know that what they're doing is relevant and it's going to apply and be helpful helps them stay motivated and progressing into their next courses and finishing their credentials. And then we have all the tools and services that we want to provide, so they get to see the skills that they're actually earning in a dashboard. We call it a profile, so that keeps track. Then there's career services tools that show them which jobs are actually aligned to those particular skills that they're acquiring. They can record the skills that they're bringing in as well, so it shows the things that they've attested to versus what they've actually demonstrated while they're with us. And then they work with career advisors. They can get interview prep, they can get resume help to make sure that they're putting their story together so that somebody can see what they're capable of doing when they start to make decisions about what their next step will be.
Amazing.
It's a lot. And Jody, I mean, you know how important this is. I mean, career, it's important, but by and large, you still got to find students. You got to know their preferences. There's so much information we have to know about students. I want to pass it over to you because you have the expertise here in finding, enrolling students. It's not an easy thing to do these days.
It's not an easy thing to do. You're absolutely right. And I think, one of Joe, you talked about the awareness of the University of Phoenix and how they made the modern learner cool before the modern learner was cool, right? Doris, I'm curious to your take because of your tenure and your experience with the university and just the evolution that it's had over the last 40 years. One of the challenges in higher ed is evolving and changing and growing to be able to find, enroll, and retain students. So how does an institution the size of the University of Phoenix, and not only the size, but just everything that it's been through, how does it move through change the way, like, what are the best practices? What's the insider information that you could offer around this is how we've evolved and changed and stayed close to what the students need to be able to not only find, enroll, and retain, but offer that support in a meaningful way for the student that does connect to those career outcomes? How do you move and change the way that UOP has done that?
So we definitely have, we focus on really understanding what's happening outside our four walls and paying attention to student voice as well. So we start with we saw the skills things coming for a while because we heard employers talking about, hey, it's hard to find people to fill these jobs. It got worse during the pandemic. And then some employers are starting to rethink what areas do I actually need a credential versus how do I focus on skills. And so we thought it was more important to make that transparent for us because we were listening to what was happening outside the market. So we have teams of people that have responsibilities. On my team, they're getting it through conferences, through reports they're looking at, through market research to understand what's happening from the space in the lens of learning so that we're adapting. We have data we collect in every course through different feedback loops from the student to hear what they're, what they need, what went well, what do we need to continue to improve so that we're continuously understanding how the learner is changing because they are, right? They're evolving. Technology and expectations evolve. And so that helps us continue to understand how we have to serve them better. How do we make things more seamless as they start to inquire about information? How do we get them the experience they need in the learning environment? And then what do they need as they kind of are ready to make those next steps? So data, I would say data is at the core of what we do. And then the student is at the core of what we do. So we're always paying attention to what they're telling us. And then we match that up with what are the employers saying? What are the four walls outside, outside our four walls? What are the, regulations? What are the other things that are happening that we have to pay attention to and adapt? And that keeps everybody informed in the institution. And that's how we make decisions about the work we prioritize. And then everybody aligns to that work.
I like that.
Keep going, Jody. Don't let me stop you. You're better than me.
Can you expand a little bit more on the coaching and development that has to happen internally to make sure that what we want to have happen for the student is actually happening. I know from my experience with UOP, coaching and development was a significant portion, and quite frankly is one of the it's a driver for my passion in supporting folks. So I would love for you to share more about that.
Sure. There's, I would start with change management first, because the important part is people need to understand, why are we making the changes we're making? How do they play a role in it? What's in it for them? And then what skills and tools do they need in order to be able to do the way they have to work? So whatever that changes in their environment, what changes for them, they need to be able to understand that they're going to be supported in the tools that we're going to offer for them to be able to be successful. So it does start with creating awareness about the change, getting people on board and desiring to make the change. Then we go to training, because you can hop right to training, and then people don't understand the why, and it create chaos. It starts to create questions. It creates distraction. So we've always managed large change using a change management model. And so that helps. And then that dictates then from the feedback loops we have from the people that are going to be affected by the change, that allows us to then determine what kind of tools and what kind of training they're going to need to be able to pivot and adapt to what we're asking them to do.
So you can't just send an email on Monday saying, hey, this is how it's going to go from here on out.
Inconceivable.
Doris, I like this conversation around change management, because I think for every institution it's different, or at least everybody I talk to gives me a different assessment of their change management process, sometimes effective, sometimes very ineffective. Talk about your role a little bit. When you just look at your title, it's like these three major things: colleges, assessment, kind of important, curriculum. What does this scope look like for you? What are we talking when you say vice provost of colleges? Is that the actual colleges built within the academic modeling? Is it some other?
So it's basically all the colleges that offer the credentials for credit. So the deans and their teams are part of that structure. And then assessment is our team that also looks at not just how we build assessments through our curriculum teams, but then are our learners showing the outcomes that they're supposed to be showing? So they're providing data and reporting and institutional reviews of how we're doing against external benchmarks as well. So we have a team that's responsible for that also reports into me. And then we do have curriculum instructional designers that work with our faculty SMEs that then take the vision and the maps that the deans are creating based on what they're seeing externally and what they're reading and the research they're doing. And then they put that together. The deans sign off with the faculty who are helping build those outcomes and assessments, because our faculty are also practitioners. So they're working in the spaces they're teaching. So they're bringing that real world content into the assessments to make sure we're measuring the right components and feel a level of confidence that this is going to actually tell us whether they're able to be ready and are demonstrating the skills they need to be. So all of that is under that title that you referenced. And then our faculty supervisors report into the deans. And then we do have a central team that supports us on the faculty support tools and the training and all the things that they need to have to be successful and up to speed on what we're asking them to do. So it's definitely collaboration between many experts.
Well, the reason I ask you is because, a lot of institutions are built differently. They have different reporting lines. And sometimes I have found through my research and personal experience that schools similar to University of Phoenix, or those that are really student-centric, have more responsibilities from an academic perspective going to one person, rather than this bifurcated model where everybody's doing one thing, because it's way more siloed that way. And what I really like about what you're talking about, and you said it originally, is that everything starts with the curriculum. And and I'm going to ask you, I'm working you up for this. Can you tell? Everything starts with the curriculum. And by and large, and this, curriculum updates or curriculum rewriting is a labor-intensive, long process, and has been for many years. They get dusty programs, and then you go, well, why can't we? Well, how come nobody's coming to our doorbell ringing program? Well, because nobody uses doorbells anymore. That's the reason why, but we still have it in the curriculum that you have to push this button. You don't. We could see you on camera now. How do you keep fresh in this world of artificial intelligence now that is now, shaking things up, if you will?
Yeah, so we have a couple of things that are ingrained in our processes that gives us kind of indicators where we need to react and when we need to react. So we have every program has what we call a program health check that happens every 18 months. And there's definitely data points that are being reviewed, both what's happening in market, but then what's happening in that program, what skills are relevant, what jobs are relevant. So we look at those components to make sure, is this still a healthy program? Did things change? Did the skills change? Do we need to add different skills? And that then gives the deans an indicator of, okay, this program needs to be revamped. And that goes into their kind of prioritization of work. Then we have actual data for each course, each assessment, each assignment that we look at that tells us where are those benchmarks. So I can go pull up a course right now at a starting point of a program and say, okay, give me the percentage of students that are achieving the skills in these courses through the assessments. And that tells me, oh, wow, this particular course has 2 particular assessments that are below benchmarks that we've set for ourselves. We need to go dig in. And we know to dig into those 2 weeks because the data says those 2 weeks are the ones that are challenging. So it gives us laser focus. So we don't have to, because you would usually say, oh, the students are saying that this course isn't what they thought it was going to be. And then you have to go look at the entire course, or you revamp the whole course, and then you find other issues. This allows us to zero in. So we'll look at student voice because we have surveys at the end of each course. We'll look at faculty voice. What did you experience in the course? And then we look at the data outcomes. And those are real-time things that all of our academic leaders have access to. And then that helps them prioritize what work, what courses, what programs need attention in real time versus waiting just the 18 months for the program health check. So we have those measures in place to really look at real time. And then we have standing measures to make sure we're looking at quality holistically. And it's just part of our process. It makes it easier when you ingrain it into the work you do as everyday work than trying to say, oh, we got to make sure to squeeze in this review for these 100 programs at some point. We're on a schedule. So every quarter, there's a set of program health checks that are due that deans know they're responsible for. And then that dictates what work has to be done in future state for prioritization. So that's how we stay fresh. Now, AI is a whole big game changer, right? So we are looking at AI from 4 kind of angles. From the academic side, we have our philosophy statement that we put together. We believe AI is going to be a powerful tool. We believe it has limitations, and we believe that we need to be teaching our learners what those limitations are. But we need to teach them how to use the tool as well, because they're going to have to operate in a world that's using AI. And when I say AI, for non-programming, non-IT courses, I'm talking about generative AI, because that's the tool that's proliferating the way we work. So that indicator is, okay, now how do we quickly impact as many students as possible to ensure that they're getting the right skills when it comes to being able to use tools like that, because employers are going to expect them to be able to use that. So that comes from external sources too. We're paying attention. We're at conferences. We're looking at what research is out there. What are employers saying, to then be able to additionally say, here's another thing that we have to be talking about and creating a plan for. And AI will impact every industry, likely most jobs. So we're trying to understand, because we're all kind of learning at the same time, what does that look like? Which ones are being impacted more now? And then prioritizing the work in those programs to make sure the skills are embedded in the work that we do.
That's a lot. And you say it so off the top of your head without thinking, which tells me that you're looking at these things really all of the time, which is crazy because I can imagine how much data that is.
Yeah. So each team has a set of data they look at that's operational in nature for them, right? Because they're not all going to look at all 100 reports, but the deans have certain reports that they'll look at. The instructional designers have reports they look at. Our services teams have reports they look at that all feed to that university goal around progression, retention, and graduation rates. And so that helps us stay aligned, but we have operational indicators that we all look at that tell us something needs more attention or we need to dig in.
Well, before I pass it to you, Jody, I just want to summarize.
It's not what you know, it's what you can prove.
Good point.
Well said, Joe.
Thank you. I recorded myself many times to get that right.
So, Doris, there's obviously a process in place, the health checks, the data indicators. How do you know when it's time where a program just it doesn't fit anymore, or we've made updates, we've made changes? I think we see that often in higher education where the program in basket weaving is still there and has been there for 15 years or whatever the case is. So how do you know when it's time?
Now listen up.
Insights EDU 2025 is almost here. Join us February 12th through 14th in New Orleans for the most anticipated higher education marketing and enrollment management event of the year.
I like that.
Imagine 3 action-packed days filled with game-changing insights, real-world case studies, and a hands-on workshop designed to transform your marketing strategy and boost your program enrollment. Learn from speakers at Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the nation. Network with industry leaders, exchange ideas, and discover the tools to drive real results. This is your opportunity to stay ahead of the competition and meet the demands of today's modern learners. Don't wait, spots are filling fast. Mark your calendar, rally your team, and head to insightsedu.com to register now. The era of the modern learner is here, and you need to be part of it. We'll see you in New Orleans. Are you going to miss Ellucian Live this year?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So you might as well register right now at elive.ellucian.com. Ellucian Live 2025, April 6th through 9th in Orlando, Florida. Do not miss it.
Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
So there's those collection of data points that if they're all kind of not meeting the benchmarks, because there's different benchmarks in each of those data sets that we look at.
It's fuzzy math.
Then collectively, that's a sign that we might need to exit out of a program, right? So the first place, if there are no longer jobs in that space, we look at the ONET data, we look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data to see which career areas, which job titles that are mapped to our credentials are actually growing. If we're starting to see a decline in that area and it's consistent, and we're also looking at feedback from employers and we're also looking at other data sources, then that would be a trigger to us to say, okay, this is probably not a program that we want to continue to support. So we'll teach it out. We'll still make sure the things are updated to the extent that we can update them. And then we'll no longer take new enrollments for it. Most of the time, because our model is we're going to look for the alignment of jobs to the things we offer. Most of the time, they need to be refreshed. It's not that they're going away. Now, AI, who knows how that will impact future jobs. So we'll have to continue to pay attention to that and continue to monitor. But it's really the skills, then the jobs detail that really helps us see is a sustainable long-term. And if we want to continue to invest in those areas, because the market may not need it anymore. And we want to be making sure that we're aligned to what the market's asking for when it comes to career outcomes.
You mentioned in there ONET and Bureau of Labor Statistics. I don't know that everyone is familiar with ONET. And obviously UOP is very familiar and uses it in career outcome, like you're saying, with programs, also on the enrollment side. I actually just had a conversation last week with an institution that really struggles when students are asking, well, what is the career outcome? How much will I be able to earn? What do the placement rates or job opportunities look like? Would you be able just to share a little bit on that for someone who heard you say that, but maybe doesn't know what ONET is?
Yeah, so ONET's actually a tool that is maintained nationally where you can look at career indicator codes like job titles at a SIP and SOC level. So you can look at categories of jobs and then you can get specific down to a set of job titles, and then it'll tell you what the data says that are needed for skills, what kind of job growth there is, the combination of two, the Bureau of Labor Statistics and ONET together. And then that gives you an indicator of the things that should be embedded into any credentials you're going to create that are aligned to those particular SIP and SOC codes. So that gives us good indication of here's what we need to be able to make sure is assessed, and that is part of the program outcomes. We'll look at also skill data that's showing up in job postings as well. And that becomes kind of how we map the programs together, is those sources of data. And then our faculty will weigh in as well through our faculty councils, since they're also working in the fields. And then you have to anticipate what the future skills might be, right? So you can't just go like real time. You also have to anticipate what the market might be saying would be needs in the future as well. And that's where some of our employers will speak into, our advisory, the members of our advisory councils that the deans work with will speak into that sometimes as well.
And of course, a SIP code and a SOC code are important just to call out here, because we use these great, amazing acronyms, particularly in the education academic part. A SIP code, I think, is classification of instructional process or program, maybe. It's classification of instructional program. And a SOC
it's basically, code, yeah.
SOC code is occupational something. SOC is occupational something. See, I should have looked them up instead of acting like I knew. Standard Occupational Classification is a SOC code. But these are classifications for programs that we have in higher ed. If you don't know, if you work in higher education and in a department that doesn't deal with this, typically you have to, when you launch a new program, it has to come with a SIP code as a part of an approval process for Title IV, because the government wants to know where it's classified and that people can get jobs before they start funding it. Right? Something basically is the short version of that, right?
Yeah, it just holds us accountable to make sure that what we're developing is aligned to what the market is saying out there is needed, and that the right skill alignment happens, the right program outcomes are developed, so that we're clear on which area of the market or the economy we're trying to play in with that particular credential. And that then helps us then make all the decisions around what do the courses need to look like? What do the learning activities need to look like? What do the assessments need to look like? So it gives us a standard alignment, place to align to national statistics to make sure that we're driving to the right outcomes.
Tell them like it is.
Doris, I want to know about you just a tad. You read your bio, and you are first in FAM to go to college, right?
Yes.
You're a stone's throw away, even if you're at the beginning of your dissertation. You're still a stone's throw away from achieving your doctorate degree.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're toward chapter 5, polishing that sucker up. What does it mean to you? I mean, you're obviously passionate about this work.
Yeah.
But as a first-gen student, and there's a lot, but there are a lot of leaders in higher education that are first in their family to go to college, but not all have the rabid passion for serving students that you exude, even in the way you talk. You just tell, you're like, serve the student. Somebody's not moving fast enough. I can tell you're going to be going, move faster, let's go. What does it mean to you to come up through higher ed, to have this level of influence for so many students, so many graduates, and achieve your own doctorate?
Yeah, so it starts, I'm going to go back to my family origin. My parents never got to finish high school. They migrated to the U.S. separately, but met in the U.S., got married, had kids. I started actually kindergarten not knowing how to speak English, because I grew up in a community of families that were the same. They came from the same place that my parents came from, because it was a level of comfort and stability for them. I saw the struggles that they had to just maintain food on the table, keep a roof over our heads. They worked hard. But they preached, you need to take advantage of education. We want you to. We didn't make these sacrifices for nothing. And so for me, that was ingrained at an early age, that education was super important. And then I fell in love with learning, because it just opened up doors. And then when I learned to speak English, I saw I could be a voice for my parents and an advocate for them when I saw them struggling to try to get information or solve problems because they had struggles with the language. And so always knew that I was going to go on to college. My initial college path was pre-law, political science, and then was in third year of my program and fell in love with business courses because I needed to take some electives. And then fourth year, I was tired. I'm like, I think I need a break. I don't know that I want to go on to law school. Started working, fell in love with leadership, And just the process of learning new things. And then went back and got my master's degree. When I finished my master's degree, University of Phoenix was opening up a campus in the Cleveland area. And I went in and met with the leaders. I'm like, oh my goodness, I love this mission. They're serving people that would have been like my parents that could have benefited from that environment because they're working and they can't go to a traditional format. So I started as a faculty member, fell in love with the mission, and said, I need to get on board full time. And I did. 24 years later, here I am. So I've held probably every role in the organization you can imagine in every department, but really fell in love with the academic component because I can see what the power of learning and skills can do for families. It did for me and my family. I can see it with all of our students and the alumni and the impact that that's had. But just also the confidence that comes with being able to accomplish something. So I continue to teach because I want to be able to understand who our students are and continue to understand how our curriculum impacts the experience. And so just watching people get excited about accomplishing and checking one more course off their list and the dynamics of the conversations and the eagerness to learn and be able to contribute, it just fuels what we do. And then you just have to show up for our graduation and commencement services and just see the passion and the support and what it took to get through a program. It took a whole family effort of investments in the learner, the student. And so that just continues to fuel what I do, what my teams do to make sure we're delivering on what the students need, helping them as much as we can set a path that's seamless as possible so that they can get through it and not worry about these other challenges or obstacles so they can still do the things they have to in their lives to live their lives, but then also help them get ready for whatever their career goals are and whatever path they choose. So
Let's go.
Yeah.
I'm motivated, Jody.
Yeah. Doris, I'm super curious in your 24 years there and all the roles that you've held within the organization. Can you share some of the leadership lessons that you've learned along the way that you would pass on to anyone listening? Just words of wisdom.
So I would definitely say invest in the relationships. I would say that's probably the biggest. I get asked that question a lot. And the biggest contributor, I think, to my success and my team's success is the investments we've made in the relationships we create with each other, with our stakeholders, the people we have to collaborate with, taking the time to get to know people, getting to know their desires, knowing what their strengths are, trying to leverage their strengths as much as possible. We all have challenges and weaknesses. It's not about always closing that gap. It's about how do I, align people to the areas that they will work best and be able to contribute at their highest levels. So that's one. Two is building a community where people feel and can see where they contribute, how they contribute, and feel like they have a voice. I think it's critical. We talk a lot about inclusion, but inclusion means that people feel like they can feel safe to speak up. They can be true to who they are. They feel like they have an opportunity to grow as much as they want to, right? Sometimes they choose to exit, but creating that environment and community. And then the other piece is being in a community that calls me higher too. Like I want to always be in a community of people that know more than I do so that I can continue to learn and grow, because you cannot lead as fast as the environment's changing, especially in higher ed, if you are not also developing yourself as a leader and learning and growing from people that have already done something or are, 2 roles ahead of you or stages ahead of you of what you want to accomplish and execute on your team. So I would say those are probably the most critical ones.
I like what you just said about your own professional development.
Yeah.
Maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, you could have sat down and gone, I've done this, I've learned it, I've got some employees over here, but I know enough because the world's not changing as rapidly. But you're right, like Gen AI and all of what it does, like you could have anybody could know more than you in any given day about Gen AI and its capabilities to do this work or that work. If you don't know how to create a prompt, you probably need to get up on that real quick and have some idea of some of the use cases, even if it's just reading, like what are the use cases of how these new technologies are going to change our life. But you're right, it almost forces us in a way. People who've been sitting on their hands going, I know enough. Now it's impossible. You have to stay up on it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely that. I would even say a few years back before AI became kind of the talk, Gen AI became the talk of the town. Right before COVID, when we all transitioned to virtual working environments, we all had to learn how to lead in a virtual environment. Like
Yeah.
most of us were not working in virtual spaces. It is different to lead in that space. So it really stretched. I mean, it stretched my skills. And how do I stay connected with people? How do I make sure they feel seen? How do I make sure I'm downloading information as much as possible? How do I pay attention to technology fatigue and still feel like people are in a community? So it stretched all of us. Even some of our best leaders were like, whoa, this is like a game changer. How do I continue to pivot, learn, and grow? And then comes AI, and you're like, whoa, like these tools can, if used appropriately, I will say, can create efficiencies that allow you to really, again, focus on the human factors of what can't be replaced by AI so that we can be more effective and continue to build those components of work that have to get done while gaining more efficiencies of the rote work and letting the tool do what it is good and what was intended to do. So, but people do fear it. I do feel like there's still some people that are waiting to see if it'll go away. It's not going away. And so we have a responsibility to make sure we're learning and understanding its limitations, its strengths, so that we can teach that to our students and then make them feel comfortable with using the tool. So when they go out and join a workforce that's using it, they know how to be productive with it.
I will tell you guys, at the institution that I worked at during COVID, right as it started, we started having Wellness Wednesdays where you had to almost, it was required that you had to show up, and they were doing like wellness exercises on screen. And the whole time I'm thinking,
I don't think so.
because I'm like, give me a break. I'm not doing this mumbo jumbo. Now, after a full day of being on Zoom all day in a virtual environment, I'm like, I got to go off a screen. I got to stare at a wall some days, be off of a camera. So it has changed our engagement, even with our own devices. It puts us on screen so much more. I mean, it's very rare that I get to see two people like yourselves and have so much fun on a screen. Usually it's work. Not that I don't have fun at work. I do, but you get the point. It's not always so nice and easy. So I greatly support those Wellness Wednesdays that I was fighting the whole time. Jody, I don't know about you.
Well, I'm a huge proponent of wellness, but where I was going with my question, my next thought was, you've talked a lot about AI on the academic side and where that fits and how ULPs really work to figure that out. Can you elaborate a little bit more on AI operationally and your perspective on where that fits for productivity connected to wellness and efficiency and optimization?
Yeah, so for sure, we're in the early stages on the academic side, even because we're learning like everybody else is. We're testing some things, we're playing with some things to make sure we're being responsible with how we're packaging that. But on the operational side, I mean, we're already using AI just in the processes and the systems that we've created. It's not Gen AI, it's just other artificial intelligence and predictions and analytics that are telling us things to pay attention to. So from an operational standpoint, just being able to use a tool like Gen AI to do early research, early brainstorming, maybe even synthesizing volumes of qualitative data that we have to be able to identify themes instead of looking through, forms and reports and trying to package that together. I could see even as far as like what we're trying to do as a connected university, how do you package all those data points and then be able to create processes that nudge or remind or tee up customized messaging or tools or resources as the data shows that the student might need it. Again, in the context of what's good, how privacy works, making sure we're, not over-indexing, because there are limitations to that. But on my team side, we're playing around with like how can we use it to really learn and get to here's a skill that we want to teach. What are some good formative questions that we can ask to be able to have a hearty discussion around these skills? We're even thinking of if we put this skill, these outcomes, these things that we want the actual course to deliver, can you build rubrics that would make sense to be able to have a level of confidence? And then our SMEs would come in potentially and look at that and say, yep, that is relevant to market, or tweak it. So it's always about the pre-work and the brainstorming and idea generation. And then you bring the humans in after the fact with their expertise to say, how do I package this all together? So it's still driven by our goals, our vision, our mapping, and then how do we use the tool to kind of package it faster, use the SMEs to give insights to it, tweak it and customize it as needed. And then that builds some efficiencies as well. So we could probably refresh courses faster that need to be refreshed as a result of gaining some of those efficiencies. We're in the middle of testing that now. So we're not using it that way consistently, but we're looking at what would be the guardrails, what would be good to use, what are the parameters we want to use it in, what are the things we'll stay away from, so that we can always maximize the power of our experts to be working in the spaces that only they can do.
And I think it probably optimizes the time that you're sitting in a room. So you don't all come into a room, sit there, stare at each other, stare at the wall, have to come up with stuff from scratch. Yeah.
Well, one thing we're not going to do is start something from scratch, because we've all met in person before, and we're all going to see each other again, I think, very soon at Insights EDU. I think you're going, Doris. I think I saw your name on a speaker panel somewhere.
Yes, you're doing a breakout. Yep.
I'll try and be there if Education Dynamics lets me off the podcast table, which I don't expect to happen. So we'll have to have you come back on the podcast, perhaps grab Jody along your way, and we'll do an update.
Sure.
But, we wish you the absolute best in your work, and I'll outro you in a second. But I have to tell you, Dr. Jody Blinko also, we didn't say it at the beginning, or I alluded to it, but she also hosts a part of the EdUp Experience podcast. Jody, you want to give our insiders a little insider information?
Yes. So working in higher ed, the EdUp Working in Higher Ed podcast is really all about elevating the voices of those individuals who are student facing or at that mid-level management role, doing the work in the day-to-day, facing the challenges that we're talking about from maybe a high level operational perspective, getting their voice and their lens on what does it look like in the real day-to-day, hearing those best practices, hearing those challenges, and really connecting that and sharing that, because that is the closest point to the student, which is why we're all here. So take a listen. Yes.
She's very, very good as a podcast host. In fact, I've debated whether to have her as a guest host, because I'm like, Elvin's going to kick me out. He's going to bring in Jody.
Oh, Joe.
I'm not going to have a job. It's the whole thing. It's a whole self-conscious thing I have. Anyway, there she is. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jody Blinko. She is the Vice President of Enrollment Management Consulting at Education Dynamics. Check out Insights EDU for more information on the conference. You will not want to miss it. It is one of the, if not the best conferences for enrollment marketing in the country. Have to be there if you want to recruit the modern learner. One person that is going to be there that is very smart and is recruiting a modern learner through amazing curriculum and building pathways to jobs. Our guest. Future, I was good about to say, but future Dr. Doris Savron. She is the long title Vice Provost of Colleges, Assessment, and Curriculum at the University of Phoenix. Doris, we hope you had fun. We had a little bit
it was
of
a great
fun
time. It's always great having conversations with both of you. So,
well, we're happy to see you. We keep up the great work, and thank you for being here, ladies and gentlemen. You've just EdUp'd.
You just made the list.
Mark your calendars for Insights EDU 2025, February 12th through 14th. Insights EDU 2025 is the can't-miss higher education marketing and enrollment management conference of the year. We're taking over New Orleans with speakers from Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the country. Discover how AI is transforming marketing and enrollment management, how to assess online program opportunities, and meet the demands of today's modern learner. Don't wait. Spots are going quickly. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go!
Ellucian Live is taking place April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida.
You just made the list.
Get ready for an unforgettable experience at Ellucian Live 2025. Join visionary leaders from institutions worldwide as we dive into groundbreaking ideas, cutting-edge solutions, and transformative best practices that will ignite your passion for innovation. This is your chance to connect, collaborate, and propel your institution into the future. Do not miss out.
Let's go!
Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.